Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Journey Like Mine, Podcast with Purpose, Episode 17. Live, Love, Learn Reflections in honor of my mother on her 80th birthday. It's been a few weeks since we last spoke in early March, and it feels good to be back. The month of Ramadan did not go exactly how I envisioned, but what I got out of it was far more enlightening than expected. I plan to share that with all of you in future podcasts, but today I want to focus this week's reflections on my mom. April 17th was my mom's birthday, so therefore this episode will be dedicated to her. She and I always talked about and hoped that we would spend this birthday together. The last birthday I got to spend with her was when she turned 60, and it was just the two of us. Unfortunately, I missed her 70th birthday because I was in the US by then. And then she passed on at the very tender age of 73. So today, I want to share with you a little bit about her through Live, Love, Learn Reflections. So let's get started. My mom, or Mumsy, my special name for her, lived, loved, learned through so much, but I will summarize it into 3 lenses as I share with you about her life: her maiden years, her married years, and her widower years. But if she was here, she would tell you it was the years without the rope around her neck. The maiden years. My mom was born on April 17, 1944 in Clarewood, a small suburb near the city of Durban in South Africa. Her dad was an Islamic priest or imam and a businessman, and her mom a housewife. Her upbringing was very conservative, and her dad did not believe in girls getting an English education. But she always wanted to go to school. But that could not manifest into her dream. So she ended up secretly taking her baby sister to school, and when her dad found out, my aunt had already gone a few years and could not stop her education. But even though my granddad prevented them from getting, or at least some of them, an English education, he did educate his children through travel. When they were little, he took them to North Africa, India, and Saudi Arabia. Not once, but twice in my mom's childhood. The first time, she was a toddler, so she couldn't remember much. But the second time, she was just 13 and remembered everything. She got to live overseas for 2 years, and she remembers it as an adventure of a lifetime. When she returned, she was a teenager, and of course of marrying age. Even though my mom would have preferred to not get married and instead get an education, the only path to freedom for a young Muslim girl in the 50s and 60s was to get married. There were a lot of suitors that wanted to marry my mom, and some even caught her eye. But like any teenage girl, we normally get drawn to the forbidden. So, the forbidden was my dad. I think you all know the story because back in January, I shared about their love story in honor of their anniversary. My mom, a rich, beautiful young Muslim girl, and my dad, a poor but dashingly handsome Muslim boy. Both thinking that marriage was the solution to their freedom and challenges. But as the story goes, reality set in very quickly after marriage. They were married in the early 60s, which brought in the married years for my mom. That was a reality she never ever thought even in her nightmares would happen after having such a safe, conservative, but good family upbringing. The married years. My mom at the tender age of 17 was married and thinking to herself that finally she had the freedom and the person who would love and take care of her. And she would do the same, but boy was she wrong. My dad was just 19 when he married my mom, so that would tell you alone that he also was way too young to be married. And when he realized that, instead of making the most of being married to the woman that he loves, he went ahead and, as any other man, did the typical thing of having his bread buttered on both sides. Not even a few years into marriage and their first child, my mom almost lost her life giving birth to my older sister Shanaz. My dad started his journey of being a Romeo to others, but a ruffian to my mother and my family. My mother endured the humiliation not only emotionally, but physically of being cheated on and relentlessly abused if she decided to even utter a word of defiance towards my dad. He treated my mom as nothing and my siblings as a burden, but his mistresses and their families as royalty. You may be asking how I know this, because I did not even exist in the 60s and 70s. Well, not only did I get a first-hand account from my mom and my siblings, but I actually found pictures after he passed on of the reality of seeing the actual evidence of it. Trust me, my heart broke. Not for me, not for my siblings, but for my mom, who did not only see in just pictures, but lived this life day in, day out, with the added evil of being abused if she dared try to fight for what was hers or her children's. Finally, she did have that ray of hope. It was her mom and dad who saved her and tried to take care of her time and time again. And finally, my mom tried to leave, not once but several times. And when she did, she tried really hard to build a new life for herself and my siblings. She worked in a factory for their well-being. But then the unthinkable happened. My mom was in hospital for minor surgery when she unfortunately fell into a coma. When she awoke, she was told by her doctors that when she returned home, that she would not have 4 children anymore. She would just have 3, which spiraled her into a painful, dark place. My brother, who was 10 years old, was in an accident while crossing the road and had succumbed to internal injuries at the same hospital as my mom was at in her coma. My mom went into despair, and the next few months was a blur. My dad had returned from his other life whenever he could, and during that time, some sort of grief connection happened between them. And guess what? That led to me coming into this world and hence telling the story today. Eventually, my dad returned to his family. In many ways, I was told by my mom and my second sister Waida that my birth had something to do with bringing us all back together. The next 2 decades, the 80s and 90s, was a roller coaster for my mom, by being the battered wife to now being poor with my dad, as he had wasted everything he had on other people, and the only person he had to return to was my mom. My sisters and brother had all married and moved on, and it was me that was left with them. Even though we were poor, and I mean receiving welfare poor, I have fond memories of my parents, yes, even my dad. You heard that. But most importantly, I found my best friend in the entire universe, my mom. She made sure she tried to give me what she could, but always instilled in me that I could be whomever I desired, but gave me one sound advice. In life, you will strive for everything, but be grateful for what the one above blesses you with. If it was not for her, I would not have the confidence to believe that a poor girl like me could attend not just college or university, but a good one like Rhodes University in South Africa. It was her and her alone, with of course the one above, the foundation of who I am and forever will be. And so in my final year, when both my parents wanted me to further my education and my dreams, everything shattered. because 2 weeks before my final undergrad exams, my dad had passed on, and my mom became a widower, or in her own words, the rope was released around her neck. The widower years, or no more rope around my neck years. After my father passed on, I knew what I had to do, and that was to give my mom complete freedom from everything. And that meant not living with my other siblings who had their own families, but with just me. She and I moved to Johannesburg after I graduated, and while I worked full time and studied part time towards my postgrad, those were the 2 amazing years with my mom, as it felt like best friends and roommates, with both of us actually covering up for each other whenever any of my siblings called. I know she had lots of fun, and so did I, but the pressure started to mount on who could control my life, and that is when my mom finally said, "It's time for you to fly." And so I did. Long story short, I met my husband, we got married, and I moved away. And in some ways, I regret not being strong enough to fight for my freedom and stay in South Africa. Don't worry, my mom still had a good life as she lived between my 2 sisters. And one day, when I get them to come onto the podcast with me, we will share stories of how bossy my mom became after my dad passed on. My dad knew my mom would be well taken care of, as her children, or at least her daughters, loved her more than life itself. I did get to see her. I visited when she had her surgery, and she got to come to the US and be with me and Z when Ilya was born. When she visited with my sister Wahida. We also returned back in 2012 when I got to take my daughter Ilya back to South Africa. I really tried to go back to visit my own family, honestly, but loyalty got in the way. Loyalty to work, loyalty to my own family. She was still there with me when I had my miscarriage and when I got pregnant with Amina, which was an agonizing pregnancy, as I almost lost her and then was told she would have severe health issues when born. And then finally, in my last trimester, they said she would be good with so many genetic testing. And when my mom returned from Umrah, visiting Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and celebrating her 73rd birthday there, she told me, "I spoke to God, and trust me, your baby will be fine." But what she really meant was that she asked God to give me a healthy baby, but in turn, what I believe is that she gave my baby her life. So on June 15th, just 2 weeks before my baby was born, my mom passed away. I could not even go to her funeral. But thanks to my sister Shanaz, and through technology, of course, she made sure I was there with my mom in her final days, as well as her funeral. And for that, I am forever grateful to my sister for doing that for me. I know in my heart I am fortunate to have not one, but 2 sisters who never left me out, even though I live so far away. So thank you, Shanaz and Waidapa. I love you both with all my heart. So the blessing in all of this was my baby. She got me through losing my mom. My baby's name was supposed to be Naima or Naira. Yes, I wanted one child with N. But a few hours after my mom passed away, my husband Z turned to me and said, "Naz, please don't get upset, but I want to suggest something." So not knowing what he was going to say in my distraught state, I asked what. He said, "It is only right to name our baby after your mom." And I smiled, but asked him which name, because she had 2, Qudsia and Amina. So obviously, you all know which one I went with because everyone knew my mom as Amina. Even though my mom is in a better place and I know paradise, she left me or had the one above give me my very own Amina. Trust me, she is 200% like a grandma. And even though she drives us crazy, I mean really crazy, she is my Amina and keeps me even closer to my mom. What is the lesson I can share today? There are many lessons my mom or I can share with my mom, which I probably have shared with all of you and will continue to share with you. I think today I will leave you with the one she consistently reminded me of even as I got older and became an independent woman, wife, mother. She said, always be grateful for what the one above has given you because it is his blessings for you. Because if you don't, then one day you could even lose that. She did not only share this from a materialistic perspective, like money and things, but she also shared this from a perspective of family, friends, and your loved ones. The lesson that I learned and continually share with everyone is cherish those that are close to you, especially your parents. And I hope from me sharing the story today about my mother, and trust me, there's more stories to share about her, I hope that you get the insight into why I am doing Journey Like Mine. Because this was her dream. And whether I get one listener, 2 or 3 or many, she always wanted people to learn from her journey in life. So thank you everyone for listening to this very long podcast today. It is in honor of my mother, and I hope that you will remember to live, love, learn for each blessed day on your journey in life. Thank you, take care, and have an amazing week ahead. Goodbye.